to Grid Live Pre-Race NASCAR Coca-Cola 600 edition. We're just coming off the Indianapolis 500. I'm Joe Sarian. With me, we got Matthew Pro of GridNetworkTV.com and Tanner Smith, editor at PitboxPress.com. A big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Deschelle, Mark, Robin, David, and Matthew for investing in the Grid Network each and every month. Plus our YouTube super chats. Buy me a coffee. We've got plenty of super chats lately. A big thank you to everyone. Of course, if you want to be a monthly investor in the Grid Network through Patreon, link in the video description. And the simplest way to support us, hit the bell icon, like our videos, and subscribe to us right here on YouTube. And visit Grid Network TV and across social media, Grid Network TV. Gentlemen, let's get started. We know right now Kyle Larson, he's on the way to Charlotte Motor Speedway. He got a bit of an early start. Unfortunately, he crashed out the Indianapolis 500 on lap 93. He downshifted when the car started stacking up on a crazy restart. Looked like Ed Carpenter slowed up, Alex Palou, others. Downshifted, lost control, took out Kiffin Simpson and Stingray Robb. But I got to say, I feel all race long, he just looked distracted, maybe even rattled, in my opinion. The delayed start, waiting for the rain to go by, just sitting in the car. He was looking at his watch on the radio, just thinking about the pressure, the time of getting to this race and Coca-Cola 600. He made a pit stop mistake, running in the back, and then this mistake. I have to ask you, Tanner, did Kyle Larson let the pressure get to him, the pressure of attempting this double?
I'm not sure on like a purely mental standpoint that I agree with that assessment that he like let the pressure get to him. But, and this is obviously just me reading someone's face, but after he got out of the infield care center after his crash, he just looked really tired. Like, I don't know what it was. I mean, obviously to just take a pretty significant impact on the track, so that could have, obviously played a part in it. But you got to think about all the traveling this man does, not just this month, all the time. He's constantly on a plane or constantly in a car trying to go fast somewhere. And eventually that's just going to wear down on you, whether you let it or not. So I don't know if I agree that he, let the pressure get to him, but I just think at a certain point, being on a clock like he was, unlike the other 32 competitors out there, that's going to weigh on you, on top of just the general fatigue of having to travel, get into so many cars during the week, and, fly on so many planes, and just all the, general hubbub that comes with running the double. So it's unfortunate to not see him finish today. Obviously, he did, complete a 500 last year and wasn't able to get back to Charlotte. So it looks like he'll be looking to complete 600 miles tonight and do as much of the double as he possibly can. And I expect him to hopefully be a little bit more well-rested, a little bit more hydrated, well-fed even going into tonight's race. But it's a real shame that he wasn't able to cap off this month of May with a solid finish in the Indianapolis 500.
Yeah, absolutely. Same thing like what Tanner said. I can't really say the pressure got to him, but I do think there were a lot more other deciding factors, like whether it was his watch or his heart rate monitor. I don't know. I saw some posts about it. But yeah, I think he was not the Kyle Larson we're really used to seeing, which is one of the best in the world. I think the best in the world won the race Kyle Larson was just in. But in terms of like just the environment too, it's like I just hope, like what Tanner said, I hope he's well rested. I hope he's got the energy on this plane or helicopter that he's on heading to Concord, Charlotte area. I wish him the best. It does suck, though, that he crashed on lap 93. He might not be able to get the 1,100 miles in, but he might be able to get, 830 miles in if he can complete the 600. And this is a race before, if you remember, 2021, where he whooped everyone in the race, scored every single point he possibly could get, and then that year when he won the championship. So it wouldn't shock me if everything that we just saw conspire on the Indianapolis Motor Speedway is already out of his head, because that's just the way Kyle Larson does it. He races almost every day, and I think even when he's not racing, he is racing something in his head mentally. So he's one of those guys that loves doing what he's doing, and I think the pressure I don't think it really got to him, but there is something that did. I don't know if he was just a little anxious about the atmosphere. The rain was coming. He's like, oh crap, is Tony Kanaan going to have to get in the car for me, so on and so forth. But now this is live, so in a couple hours we're about to see him in his atmosphere, and it wouldn't shock me if he put belt to butt. You know what I mean? So that's how I feel about that.
You bring up a good point, Tanner, about looking tired. Even when we saw the onboard cameras that were waiting for the green flag, well, just waiting for the command to start engines, I thought he almost looked like a little tired, a little tense. I just feel like, I don't know, maybe just the pressure of the second year and knowing that NASCAR is the priority race, more attention, especially with Fox. He was on some Fox programs. I wonder if maybe that was just something that sort of wore him out. So overall, it'll be interesting to see what happens. I guess one of the follow-up questions, I'll just quickly throw to you both. First year, rain issues. Second year, a little bit of rain, not as bad, but then crashes out. Could there be a third attempt, starting with you, Tanner? Do you think a third double attempt, maybe not next year, but a couple years later, could be in the cards?
I mean, I don't see why it couldn't be next year, but I just think that Kyle Larson needs a little bit more time with the hybrid unit, and I just don't think he got that in this last month or so that he's been practicing the IndyCar. I just feel like, with Arrow McLaren, I feel like there's a really solid relationship there between them and Hendrick Motorsports. And honestly, I feel like there is potential for better. Obviously, we saw last year Larson was able to compete for the win for the first 60, 70% of the race until that speeding penalty kind of bit him on the rear. But at the same time, it is a significant financial investment for both Arrow McLaren and Hendrick Motorsports and, all of their partners. So it'll really be up to them to see if they are interested in entertaining a third season. And, maybe they'd move on to a different NASCAR driver, such as the one that they initially had pinned for that car. But I don't know. I don't want to speak too early. We have 365 more days until that race even comes back around. So it's hard to say, but I think it'd be a bit of a loss for everybody involved in both races if Larson or somebody isn't trying to do the double. I think it's a feat in motorsports that's unparalleled, and I would really love to see more drivers be able to do it. So yeah, it's unfortunate, but again, I really hope that he's able to make it back and hopefully can bring a couple along with him, either from the NASCAR side or from the Indy side to NASCAR.
Yeah, absolutely. I can agree with that. It's one of those things. It's like, do I think he's going to do a third? Probably, if he doesn't have to foot any of the bill, which I don't think he does in that sense. And maybe, like Tanner alluded to, do they try to go after Mr. Rowdy Kyle Busch there? Kyle Rowdy Busch, I should say. Because obviously we found out recently that he actually had the contract lined up in that ride until it fell through. But I think one thing to note in the next couple of years for that is if NASCAR and Honda actually have that partnership forming. I know NASCAR, they have some meetings coming up, possibly Monday, Tuesday. So if Honda becomes the fourth OEM, the manufacturer in the sport, I think we'll see a little more of the double. But I think that really does hinder it, because I would love, don't get me wrong, if Ryan Blaney were to do the Indy 500, that would be amazing. But the thing is, he's in a Ford. Is Penske going to get approval for him in a Chevrolet? Unlikely. Jimmy Johnson just mentioned on a podcast, because he was in Chevy and they weren't running Chevys at the time or something when he was in his prime, his Indy 500 deal fell through. This was before he became an IndyCar driver. So I think a manufacturer will play a big part. But I think Larson could possibly bring people with him over to IndyCar to do the double. And I think it's great for both sports in terms of the marketing value, the attention. Like, I'm pretty sure more people will turn into Prime just to see Kyle Larson from the IndyCar side, just like a bunch of people tuned into the Indy 500 today to watch Kyle Larson race. I think it goes both ways. So Yeah, do I think he's gonna do it? Yeah, I lean more on the yes. I'm like probably 75-25, but I hope this opens up more avenues for more drivers to do the 1,100 miles.
I'd love to see more drivers attempt to double. I know in the chat room, one of our regulars, Amber JJ, we want a third try. I assume that's for Kyle Larson. It's good for the sport overall. I mean, people were talking about how Tony Stewart, the only driver to have done the full 1,100 miles. You got the intention for both series. I mean, I'm curious to see, since it's the first year for Fox on IndyCar and the Indy 500, how the races are going to turn out. Because now Coco 600, Amazon Prime, so subscription online streaming. Be really interesting to see how their ratings all shape up and how many people will be watching Kyle Larson at the Coca-Cola 600, where he did qualify second. So overall, a good starting position, and very likely he's not going to have to miss any of the parts of it. Going to keep his starting position, because in the past we saw how Tony Stewart had to start in the back. John already had to start in the back because they'll miss the driver's meeting. Doesn't seem like that's going to be the case. He is on track, essentially, to come here much more well rested compared to if he had just finished the 500. Rush to the airplane, the helicopter, everything. I got to ask you, Matthew, considering how the Indy 500 went, he's got a good start in this race. Once the Coca-Cola 600 gets started, do you think he'll be able to just fully focus, forget about the noise of the double, forget about what happened to Indy 500, and just race like a normal race, not the second leg of a long day?
Yeah, I think what we've seen from Kyle Larson is that when he makes a mistake, which even though he's one of the best all time, I think one of the best in this, currently in motorsport, he makes a lot of mistakes. But also, does anyone really bounce back better than Kyle Larson when he makes those mistakes? And I think today is a good, big shot or big opportunity to say that he can probably go out in the Coke 600 and just get right around Chase Briscoe and just go to work like he does. It's going to, I think it's fatigue. I mean, since this next gen era of cars, it's going to be hard. I want to read this comment from Denver, though. Congrats to Alex Palou, but if he keeps winning, he might be heavily looked at by IndyCar Tech. I know he's the greatest in the world right now, and he beat one of the other greatest in the world here today, who's now racing in his own element, just like Palou was just a few minutes ago, technically, right? But I think Kyle Larson is one of those guys. He's probably already forgot that he just had that incident at the Indy 500. He's probably locked in right now on the plane, whether it's in a nap, whether it's eating a cheese stick or an orange or something, apple, getting some fiber in. So I wouldn't be shocked if Kyle Larson really did all 600 miles and led a lot like he has. If you look at any of the stories so far at gridnetworktv.com that Kyle Larson's won 3 races, he has pulled kind of a Martin Truex type race where he just dominates. When Kyle Larson wins, 95% of the time he's whooping everyone's butt the whole time. So it's very likely. I think he's already forgotten the noise, to be honest with you, and I think he's ready to do 600 miles.
Talking about getting his fiber up. All right, Grandpa. Anyway, moving on. Kyle Larson, as Matthew kind of so eloquently put it, will probably put this out of his mind more often than not. Obviously he's had his fair share of struggles, not only, in IndyCar, especially this month. That was his third crash of the month of May, which not a banner month for him, but if anybody is capable of compartmentalizing and putting everything behind them, it's Kyle Larson, including the rest of his competition. I think that Larson I think it's just entirely possible, considering he will likely make the pre-race drivers meeting now, as well as the driver intros. I imagine that he will still start on the front row for the Coca-Cola 600 tonight. And what a headline it'd be if he were to come out and just absolutely spank everybody tonight, just as kind of like a reminder that, hey, yeah, that didn't go too well over there in Indy, but over here in NASCAR, I'm still that guy. The headline, I can see it now. teardrops at Indianapolis leads to champagne pouring in Charlotte. And I just feel like, given how strong that they've been at what I consider Rick Hendrick's playground, I mean, this is obviously the foundation, the skeleton of the team that Jimmy Johnson left behind after winning 7 championships with it. So I really wouldn't be surprised to see them go out and get this Coke 600 tonight, and not only do it by winning it, but by absolutely eviscerating everybody behind them.
This could be the big moment for Kyle Larson. I mean, he came in 4th in the grid ranking. Go out there and just make that statement like, I may have not had a good day at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, but I wanted to show that I'm the driver to beat in the Cup Series at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Longest race of the year. That will still be a statement. Something to hang your head up high that, look what we did. I still remember, I think it was 2 years ago when Kyle Larson had that really rough start to the race, in which case his crew chief got on the radio. Was like, look, we've had more penalties, we've been on fire, we've had all this stuff go wrong, but we're going to come back in the second half. And they had a much better second half of that race. In the chat room, Denver, I see Kyle Larson taking a couple of years off NASCAR and competing in IndyCar for a year or two. That would be really interesting. I mean, especially considering contracts and everything with Rick Hendrick and so on, that'd be really interesting development. Of course, if anything like that happens, follow us here at Grid Network TV. I encourage everyone to tune in, subscribe, hit the bell icon so you don't miss any of our programs. Now, of course, Kyle Larson, all the talk. He almost got the pole. He did not. Who did? We saw Chase Briscoe take the pole, and he isn't that 19 Joe Gibbs racing car. And I have to say this. Last year, he won the Southern 500, a surprise win with Stewart-Haas Racing. That was sort of the last big crown jewel before, of course, the Daytona 500 this year. Well, you go to Daytona 500 this year, who took the pole? Chase Briscoe. Now, of course, Daytona 500 is Daytona 500. Anything can happen. Here we are now, Coca-Cola 600. It's still just as intense. Not as unpredictable as the Daytona 500 Talladega. But he's going to be leading the field. This team knows how to win in this track. His best finish at the Coca-Cola 600 was 4th in 2022 with Stewart-Haas Racing right before things started going downhill. So, Tanner, when it comes to 10 drivers you think will be able to win this race, is Chase Briscoe one of those 10 drivers that you feel has a real shot of winning this race?
No. To kind of expand upon that, first of all, I don't know what Marcus Smith and NASCAR are thinking, having qualifying for a evening and night race at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. That baffles me to no end, and I just don't understand it, frankly. I don't think it helps you prepare for the race or how the track is going to look at all. The only thing it really does is show you where the bumps are. The way the track is going to change from 1 p.m. to 6 p.m. when we get about rolling tonight, that's a significant change in terms of temperature, track temperature especially, and just, kind of what your overall grip level is going to look like. So not only that, I've been openly critical in here about James Small and kind of my small opinion of him and his abilities as a crew chief. And I just feel like he never won this race with the guy that led the most laps here, with the team that he worked for prior to this with Martin Truex Jr. at Furniture Row. And I just feel like he lacks the ability to make adjustments throughout the race and keep up with the track to keep his drivers up front. Not only that, I just don't feel like Chase Briscoe got a whole lot out of his car yesterday in the Xfinity Series race and probably didn't get a whole lot of data down, a whole lot of learning in. I just don't think that they have the momentum necessary to contend tonight, and it's a shame because we're all used to that 19 car at this track, obviously running up front and having a chance to contend, but based on what I've seen from this team and based on what I know of Chase Briscoe, I just don't think that this team is going to contend tonight. But as I always say on here, I'd be delighted to be wrong.
Yeah, looking at it, If Joseph maybe the top 11 contenders, I think I would say yes. Top 10, I don't think so as well. I think Briscoe truly is like right on that bubble of maybe like even looking at the DraftKings odds, I think he was like 12th or 13th, somewhere along those lines. But there's still, even though he's starting on pole, if besides finishing fourth here a few years ago, his other finishes are 25th, 20th, and 23rd. It's just, unfortunately for him, hasn't been one of those tracks. He is quietly 12th in the standings, though. He has 4 top 5s, and he started off his Joe Gibbs career strong. I believe he was top 5 in the Daytona 500, and then just kind of, it's been quiet for Briscoe. And I think his Gibbs teammates are outshining him, except Ty Gibbs, who is making his 100th career start today. So I'd argue maybe Ty Gibbs probably has a better chance than him, too, to win this race. But I wish Chase Briscoe the best. I think it's cool that he's had, I think this is his first or second pole with Gibbs already. Yeah, second. So it's yeah, that's all I can really say. He's probably the 10th or maybe 11th or 12th contender in this event ultimately. And it'd be funny if he just shut us up. I mean, we've had these conversations before, all three of us, where we've said this driver has no absolute chance, and then here at night I'm writing the story about how that driver got it done. So that's what happens in this sport. So we're looking forward to it. But Chase Briscoe, I think he's a very talented driver. There's a reason why Coach called him immediately and put him in that 19 car. But just I don't think today's the day he's going to get it done.
It's very interesting. I feel with the Coca-Cola 600, you see veterans that know how to get the job done, past champions win this race. But we've had our run of surprise winners, first-time winners. Of course, Jeff Gordon's a first-time winner here. Bobby Labonte, they went on to have good long careers. But then even Casey Mears' first career win. Briscoe has those wins here in the Cup Series, but I just feel like a combination, I just feel is a little bit short. Maybe it's part of it with the crew chief, maybe his ability to be that top contender. I just don't think he's up there yet, but he could, I think, easily prove us wrong, especially if he is, like you said, that 11th place person that could go out there and get the job done. Speak about drivers coming up being longtime veterans. You got to talk about William Byron, who, of course, won the Xfinity Series race yesterday. Well, he's going to be in that car now till 2029. So by 2029, we're all going to be talking about he's been in there for quite some time. I'm assuming he'll still be performing well. Byron, in the long run, you also got Kyle Larson, who I don't, as much as people would like to see him go racing in a car, I don't think he'll make that switch. And you got Chase Elliott, who I don't think Rick Hendrick's going to give up anytime soon. So that leaves Alex Bowman. Now, he is in the top 10 of this race. He's top 10 in points. Overall, consistently up towards the front. But everybody always relegates him as that fourth Hendrick driver. More pressure of, does he belong in that organization? Does this add more pressure, do you think? Especially since Hendrick Motorsports will essentially only have one seat, his seat, without any other option if they see a long-term upcoming talent that could be that next generational talent Mr. Hendrick wants.
Yeah. I think I have a lot of thoughts on this personally. I'll try to keep it short. I feel like we still treat Alex Bowman like Tommy Baldwin Racing or BK Racing Alex Bowman. It's like, this is Hendrick Motorsports has 8 wins, Alex Bowman. I get that his 3 teammates are 3 of the top 6 best drivers in the sport. But you got it. He's won in, I think it was 5 of the 7 years he's been competing, or 5 of the last 6 years he's won a race, not including this year. It's like the guy performs. And I know there's so many rumors every single year, whether it's people coming on podcasts saying, oh, be aware of the number 48 might be in different hands. But now I know we're going to mention Kyle Busch and stuff like that. There's obviously big news that was covered with him. Well, if he ain't going there, who are you going to put, honestly? The guy who's running top 10 in points, he's starting top 10, he's consistently up there. It's like, who are you going to put in that car? I think there's a lot of development drivers out there. There's a lot of great ones. There's one in mind who I know Tanner's going to be like, who he's truly the only driver I think that would take over that's not in Cup already. I know people have said Hocevar before, right? People have said other Chevrolet drivers. There's one driver that I don't think gets mentioned a lot that could possibly make the jump in the Chevy camp, and this is where I'm going to leave it at that. I don't think this adds a lot of pressure to Bowman. I really don't if he doesn't perform here. I think Jesse Love is the biggest contender for that 48 car. That's all. That's how I'm going to leave it.
Ooh.
That is not at all who I thought you were going to say. I thought it was his friend Zilly that you were going to mention, but apparently not. Either way, I think that Alex Bowman probably shouldn't be in threat of having his ride ripped away from him. This is a guy that has 8 career wins at the Cup Series level on several different kinds of racetracks. He is immensely talented behind the wheel, but he just doesn't have the full season points finishes to kind of, reflect that. It reminds me a little bit of Jamie McMurray in that way, where McMurray never finished his career with a top 10 points finish, but you couldn't tell me that he wasn't a factor in, some years of his career. I think Bowman's a little bit better than that, closer to a Casey Kane style kind of guy, but at the same time, all your teammates have contract extensions through the end of next year at minimum, and for some of them, like Byron, way further ahead. And granted, you do have Rick Hendrick's Ally sponsorship, so you have the company kind of funding your car for all 36 races, and I think that is a big feather in his cap as far as retaining his spot on that team. But at a certain point, I'm just starting to wonder if Rick Hendrick's going to get bored, which has been a big threat to his race team overall. And I just feel like you have talents coming up through the NASCAR ladder system right now who are extremely talented. Some of them are already in the Cup Series, such as Carson Hocevar. You have Connor Zilich, you have Jesse Love, all 3 of them extremely talented drivers in the Chevy camp that have already accomplished quite a bit in the lower series. So I'm just we have to put out the best 36 every week. I don't think that we actually do that, but we should at least strive towards it. And I feel like Alex Bowman's definitely one of those 36, but do I think that if I gave him a Spire Motorsports car, he could go win with it? I think maybe, but at the same time, it's if I were to put Carson Hocevar in the 24 or the 48, do I think it could go win multiple races every season, which the 48 in particular, they've kind of struggled with over the past, ever since the next gen really got implemented. I would tell you, yeah, because Carson Hocevar is one of the fastest drivers I've seen come through the pipeline in a long time, with the ability to manage his equipment very well. So I just think that Alex Bowman probably doesn't get the credit that he deserves, but at the same time, you can't really pass up on guys that could be your next Jeff Gordons, your next Jimmy Johnsons. I mean, heck, even your next Chase Elliott's. So I think that Bowman probably deserves more respect and more time in that ride, but at the same time, he's really not putting up the W's that require you to stay with Hendrick Motorsports if you're not the most popular driver. So at the end of the day, him being on Hendrick payroll, on a Hendrick sponsorship, and not winning races, it's not a combination to keep you in that ride.
Yeah. I gotta ask this follow-up because it sort of reminds me of in the past when Hendrick Motorsport had Jeff Gordon, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Jimmy Johnson, and Mark Martin. Very, very experienced lineup. But they weren't exactly winning that much. And then, of course, here comes a younger group of drivers. Casey Kane came into the number 5. Then Chase Elliott came to the 24. Then, of course, Bowman substituted, replaced Dale Earnhardt Jr., Kyle Larson came in. Then we have William Byron. Could Hendrick Motorsports fall in that same trap as before, where they end up with such senior drivers with such long contracts that they miss out on such talent, Tanner?
Absolutely. I feel like it's kind of like you're damned if you do, damned if you don't. If you bite on the guy that has a higher upside than Alex Bowman, or whoever they decide to get rid of, um, in this hypothetical scenario, if you do decide to get rid of him and then he goes and tears it up somewhere else and ends up winning a championship, you'd look pretty stupid. If you don't bite and you just stick with these same four for the foreseeable future, you're running the risk of stagnating. And I don't mean that to sound accusatory towards any of those four drivers, but it's just a simple fact of life that if you have the same four people working the same job for, 10 years, let's say that they make it all the way to the end of the decade, you run the risk of just not being able to continue to innovate. Obviously, I think that having a driver like Kyle Larson who is willing to try things and experiment with setups and do things the hard way, I think having someone like him on your team is obviously going to be beneficial for you in the research and development of your race team. But at a certain point, you just kind of run out of things to try. And I think that if Chevy as a whole is looking to move on from this Camaro car model, I think that having that same four might be beneficial for them. But at the same time, you've got to wonder if that's going to be compatible with all four of them. It could be that two of them don't take to the new model whenever it comes out and fall behind, and the whole team kind of gets dragged down as a result. So, like I said, it's kind of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. If you get rid of a guy and then he goes out and beats you, kind of like how Joe Gibbs Racing did with Joey Logano, you look pretty dumb. But you have to just kind of have faith in whatever decision you make. And Rick Hendrick is somebody that isn't lacking in confidence. So I'm sure whatever decision he makes, he will sit in it and accept it.
Yeah, I agree with Tanner. And it's one of those things too. It's like, it's weird because I really think you can look at this both ways in the sense where it's like, yeah, you don't want to get stagnant, but at the same time, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I mean, Bowman all four of those guys have been consistently lately inside the top 10 all the time. But then again, it's like you do risk out on losing a lot of talent by that, whether it's a Jesse Love, whether it's a Connor Zilisch. The trucks don't have a lot of Chevrolet guys, I think, tied down as much as Xfinity. However, I know like Raja used to be a big name brought up, but he's still in development in trucks, and I think he's got at least a couple more years before you see him Xfinity, then inevitably Cup racing if he gets up there. But yeah, the other guys too. There's people with Chevrolet is something. There's so many options, unlike what you see with Toyota, for example. Is Toyota loses a lot of guys because they don't have enough room. However, Chevrolet has so much talent to pick from that if Bowman messes up, you have three of those guys we just mentioned knocking on the door, ready to take over that 48, which Ally and GMAC technically has been there for longer than I've pretty much existed. So made a joke. Casey Mears had the sponsorship, might have changed a couple names throughout the history of it, but then obviously Jimmy Johnson got it, and now Alex Bowman. So yeah, we're joking in the chat behind, but it's like they do risk the thing of missing out talent. They really do risk it, but then again, it's like, who else are they going to get? And I think we're noticing, which I know I keep mentioning Kyle Busch, it's like, are there any lateral moves that can really happen? I think this free agency is one of those that I don't think a lot really could happen. I think we went into the season saying this silly season is going to be absolutely insane. And now looking at all the extensions and stuff, it's like, is it really going to be a lot? But a lot of these insiders say that there's stuff coming. I'm waiting for it. I don't know what it's going to be, but I guess we'll see. So, yeah, I think they can miss out on talent. But at the same time, if you got many guys in the top 10, why do you want to replace somebody who you're guaranteed a playoff spot for? But, hey, that's why we're doing this, and I'm not Rick Hendrick, right?
It'll be interesting, especially if there's just like a off season and then all of a sudden it's like another team just shows up and then everyone's talking about Hendrick Motorsports drivers are up there in age. It'll be really interesting to follow this as it keeps going on. Just without William Byron to 2029. Elliott's not going anywhere for Kyle Larson unless he does want to make a shock move to IndyCar. He's not going anywhere for a while, and Bowman continues being up there. He earned his spot as long as he performs. So it'll be really interesting to see. And update for everyone, Kyle Larson has arrived at Charlotte at the Motor Speedway, so plenty of time before the Coca-Cola 600. Let's go ahead. Lightning round. There's the lightning round. So we'll give everyone opportunity to participate in the chat room. 10 words or less each of these questions. Matthew, starting with you. 40 cars are starting this race. We have seen plenty of crashes the last few years with this generation of car. Will we have more or less than 20 cars finished on the lead lap?
We will have more.
We will have more. I think that the stages kind of ruin lap down cars happening.
Stages, and of course, the free lap you get back with every caution that just automatically puts one car back on the lead lap. Rookie of the Year battle. Shane Van Gisbergen starting 30th. Riley Herbst 31st. Who finishes ahead, Tanner?
SVG. He's like a cockroach. You can't kill him.
Honestly, whoever survives,
Yes.
I'll say Riley.
I think I might go with Riley too. Just interesting to see where that team is. Speaking about Toyota, John Hunter Nemechek starting in the top 5. Can he be a race long contender for a top 10 finish, Matthew?
I will say yes. He's really not as bad here as people think he is. He's won an Xfinity for more than 10 words before.
I think JHN can have a chance to get a strong finish tonight.
I think a strong finish, big thing, avoid the trouble. His teammate and also homeowner, Jimmy Johnson, he sort of did a double. He did some laps with Tom Brady at Indianapolis Motor Speedway. He is now here. Where do you see Jimmy Johnson finishing, Tanner? Is it top 5, top 10, top 20, or lower?
I'm going hot. I think he can win it.
Oh,
I will be safer and say at least top 20, but it wouldn't shock me at number 700. Get it.
curious to see how you go with it. Pick a winner, Tanner. That'll be really interesting. Brad Keselowski, starting 35th. Last year, he finished second. Are you confident he's going to get a win, Matthew?
No.
I'm a little bit more confident. He came back from the back at Kansas. He can do it here.
I think there's just too much bad luck. I think he's going to find himself in trouble. I think I'm going to go with no as well for Keselowski. Just not having the year. Speaking about not having a year, I know we talked a little bit about Hendrick Motorsports and contracts. Well, it was made news this week. Richard Childress Racing has picked up the option on Kyle Busch. Rumor spreading around is that Busch wants out potentially, but there's no other top rides available. Other rides can include teams that are trying to build themselves up or don't have the equipment. Would it make sense for Rowdy Busch to go there? Tam, are you surprised none of the teams, whether it was Ford, because we know it's Ford, you got some teams like Front Row, which gets a Penske Alliance. None of the Toyota teams, of course, Kurt Busch has a good working relationship with 2311. And of course, no other Chevy team, especially top tier team, didn't try to make something move. And do you think Kyle Busch might be past his prime?
To answer the last portion first, no. Kyle Busch still has plenty in the tank. He just turned 40. I think that for most drivers, this is about when your prime is supposed to start. So I definitely think he's far from done. As for other teams not really looking to take a chance on him, I think it has more to do with the price tag than anything. Last time the Kyle Busch was out there trying to, kind of float his name around back in 2022 to end up, either with Joe Gibbs Racing or another team. A lot was made of just how much it costs to kind of fund a car for a 2-time champion with 60 wins on his ledger. So I think that this has more to do with probably his price tag for a lot of these teams. But at the same time, like, who do you really move him out for in the top 3 teams in the NASCAR Cup Series? At Penske, you have 3 guys that have, pretty extensive histories with that organization. Logano, though he didn't start there, he's won them 3 championships in their first Daytona 500 or second Daytona 500. Sorry about that, Ryan Newman. Joe Gibbs Racing doesn't seem like that's an option for a little while. Obviously, they have 4 strong drivers there that they seem pretty committed to, though Briscoe, obviously it kind of remains to be seen what's going to happen there with him. Don't know how long that contract is and what its clauses and stuff look like, but still, I don't think that they would kind of ditch him so haphazardly. And you look at Chevy, we just talked about all of their drivers that are locked in at Hendrick Motorsports, and frankly, none of the other Chevy teams are what I would consider even close to tier 1 at the moment. So yeah, it's just kind of an unfortunate situation for RCR and Kyle Busch. I think that the understanding was we bring in a former champion, a guy with a lot of experience, a lot of W's under his belt, that he'll come here and help build us up from our, developmental advantage that they had from, constructing and testing out the next gen car. And that worked for about 15 weeks in the first season and has completely cratered since. But there's always hope that something can turn around for that team going forward. Obviously, they had a completely out of nowhere run at Richmond with Austin Dillon last year that ended in chaos that didn't really need to happen. But regardless, I just think that Kyle Busch is kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place, and that rock and that hard place are the R and the R in the RCR. He's the C now.
Yeah, if you told me 5 years ago that nobody would really want Kyle Busch and he was on a 60-plus race winless year, whatever he's on, he's stuck in a rock with a hard place. It's tough. It's like, is the only top, like the top tier teams, I'm not going to get into as much as Tanner, but it's like, where would he even go? You're not going to want to move to, Spire. I think you're getting worse. Like, no offense to Spire, but even he made a comment about the truck power on Friday. He was like, yeah, it just doesn't have what it did with KBM, even though a couple weeks prior they finished 1-2. So it's like, we'll see what happens there. But it's just Kyle Busch is at a point. I don't think he's past his prime, but I think he's getting closer. I think, unfortunately, the way this sport works is it's I know it's a sport, but in reality, it's a high-priced advertising business, and Kyle Busch is one of the highest-priced advertisers, you should say, when it comes to being out there. It's like Joe Gibbs was going to try to go bankrupt to keep him in a car, but then again, you don't know. Then you force Martin Truex out another year because Ty's still coming up. But then if you look at the B tier teams, I don't even know what Richard Childress is, because they're just, I can't think of a correct word to describe them, but it's once in a while they show up and it's like, oh, Kyle Busch almost got it done, or Austin Dillon finds victory lane at Richmond. Mm-hmm. It's just, they're so inconsistent, and it sucks for them. But they got people like Jesse Love and Austin Hill ready knocking on the door. But I don't know what's going to happen there. And he's not going to go back to Toyota, I don't think, if it's with 2311, because Riley Herbst is a lot cheaper, and Monster Energy and Terrible Herbst has a big partnership there that will keep Riley in that car until Corey Haim finds some money. Then Corey Haim will be there. And then it's like, if he goes back to Toyota, he ain't going to Legacy. Why would Kyle Busch go to Legacy Motor Club? It's one of those things. He's getting the worst end of the stick possible in terms of free agency, because no matter where he could possibly go, it's only going to get worse for him. So I think he's a little more cautious as he was back in 22 when he inevitably made the move, or 22 to 23. So we'll see, but I don't see him really replacing anyone, because you don't want to go to Spire's bad unless somehow Michael McDowell just retires early, because if you're Spire and Hocevar doesn't leave, you're not going to replace him. Justin Haley, for some reason, even though he's 28th in points right now, I think there's a penalty though involved with that. the NASCAR loves him. A lot of the teams in the industry, we've had that conversation before, where it's like we had those conversations when he went to Rick Ware that he was going to be lined up with Keselowski, had that alliance there. But so I just don't know what's going to happen to Kyle Busch. That's my long story. Is I don't. He's not really past his prime, but I think his winning 5-6 races a year is never going to happen again unless he stays, goes back to Xfinity or trucks full time. But hey, last point I'm going to make: if Dodge or Honda come in, that might be a perfect opportunity for Kyle Busch to turn Brexton. Brexton just turned 10 in the next 5-6 years. Put him in a top tier equipment that could be a different manufacturer. But now I'll shut up. I'm sorry about that.
I love the Dodge Honda bid because I could see where when Dodge came back to the Winston Cup, it was almost like, okay, for Sterling Marlin, who had done nothing with Felix Sabanes, but then when here comes Chip Ganassi, it's almost like a relaunch of his career. If
Bill
Dodge
Elliott
was
too.
Bill Elliott, yep, Abraham Motorsports,
who was going through a significant rough patch of his own, and was able to crack it with that new manufacturer. So I mean, maybe Matthew's cooking.
And that's what I'm saying. I think he is. I mean, you could have that with Dodge. I think they would want to make a splash like that, and then Honda. Well, why not too? But I think will be really interesting. Kyle Busch, Toyota. We know Toyota's fiercest rival in motorsport is Honda. I would wonder, would Honda be like wanting to say, hey, we want to bring Kyle Busch, and then of course his son as well too. A lot of potential. I think this could be a really interesting development. Of course, there's rumors that NASCAR leadership were at the Indy 500. There was a lot of known speculation about Honda's state with IndyCar, especially after the mess this week. Anything could happen. It'll be really interesting to follow all the news, and we do that right here on the Grid Network. Well, 600 miles left to go today. We started today, somewhat that's very early, 5 a.m. my time, for MotoGP, completed F1, IndyCar, now NASCAR. And remember, they're on a new channel. Well, not exactly a channel, streaming on Amazon Prime. William Byron trying to make it 2 consecutive Crown Jewel race wins with the Daytona 500 win and trying to go for this one. Kyle Larson, he's already back from the Indy 500. He wants to go out there and get a win. Chase Briscoe on the pole, love to bring a win first with him and Joe Gibbs Racing, but I know there's plenty of storylines. So Tanner, starting with you, what other storylines will we be following today?
I'll be watching for a lot of long run speed out of some of these cars. I think that after the first 150 laps or so, this race tends to calm down a little bit. Obviously, 2022's finish notwithstanding, but it's just something I've noticed over the years that the drivers that have the most long run speed in this race and the ones that are able to stay at the front for most of the event are typically the teams that tend to go out and win the whole thing. Not only that, I feel like another storyline I'm paying attention to is obviously what Jimmy Johnson's night is going to look like. Obviously, it's a 700th start. I would like to think he's not just going to dip after this, but the way that he and his social media team have been playing it up all week, including putting the highlighter number on the car, it's definitely given me some cause to pause about his career as a whole. But at the end of the day, I think that he will have a very strong run here. Obviously, his teammate and employee, John Hunter Nemechek, had a strong run in qualifying, and will look to build upon that in the race. Outside of that, I am also looking at some guys towards the back of the qualifying order here. Brad Keselowski, as we touched on earlier, did not have a great qualifying run, but in the Ford, he might have good long run speed that will allow him to creep forward throughout the night and hopefully contend for the win. You also have Bubba Wallace, who has a couple of top fives in this event in the past and has had a number of strong performances here in previous years, but just hasn't had quite the luck or the speed to get up to the front at the end. But yeah, I just feel like there are a ton of guys throughout this field that have a great chance to win tonight, and it'll really be a show of who has, who can survive, really, because the Coke 600 is more of a race of attrition for a lot of these teams, and we've seen a number of disqualifications and just wrecks this year throughout all three major series. In fact, after last week's race, we have cropped past the threshold of most DNQs or DQs, I should say, across all three series in a season through 12 weeks for most of them. This is week 13. So definitely looking forward to whatever is going to happen tonight. And I'm just hoping it's more exciting than what we saw today in Indy.
Yeah, the passing at Indy reminded me of every intermediate you see in a Cup car, honestly. But anyway, with the storylines, I know Joe mentioned some, Tanner mentioned some. There's a couple I want to know. One I'm going to touch a lot on. I think not a lot. I don't want to waste your guys' time, but one is the guys making milestone starts, right? Ty Gibbs is his 100th start here. Ryan Priest 200th. Daniel Suarez 300th. Zilich, it's his second start. So Zilich, after coming off the back injury, did really well yesterday at the time. So Saturday, the Charlotte race, finished second, I believe. So and again, very, very great race for him. See what he can do. Jimmy Johnson, 700th start. If he can somehow win this race, I hope to never see Jimmy Johnson in a race car again. I think if you win like this, when you're, quote, past your prime in a car that has not had any speed in terms of he's had the speed, his team really hasn't. And I've talked to people with legacy before, and they said Jimmy Johnson doesn't care about the accolades. He's running to get data for this team to get it done. And every time he's in the car lately, not the previous couple of years, but lately, it seems like he is their best option on the track, which is crazy to say. But I think the biggest storyline we have to be watching here today is Trackhouse Racing. I know that sounds crazy, but please, if you take a couple minutes, hear me out. One mention is Zilich, but if you look at the lap averages of all of practice, there was a Trackhouse Racing Chevrolet in the top three in the 5, the 10, the 15, the 20, the 25, and the 30 for the long run. Just to mention, Daniel Suarez was the fastest at the 30 lap average. 25, second fastest was Shane Van Gisbergen, and Suarez was fourth, just to keep that in mind. 20th was Ross Chastain. 15 laps, Ross Chastain. 10 laps, Ross Chastain. And 5 laps, Ross Chastain was third, but Ty Gibbs was fastest. So it shows that even though Chastain had so much, I think he wasn't used to the speed that he had in this car. That's why he hit the wall and couldn't qualify. So he's coming from the way back, and he's got a long, long way to go in order to do it. So I think if we watch any storyline, it's going to be how Trackhouse Racing can perform here. They've shown in practice they have a lot of speed. It's just kind of untapped potential, I feel, with what they're able to do. Now, if Chastain starts last and somehow finishes ahead of all of them, all his other teammates, so Zilich, SVG, and Suarez, although it wouldn't surprise me, it'd kind of be like, oof, like something, the dynamic in that team, like we've seen in the standings. Chastain's up here, and just then you fall down. Then there's Suarez, and then SVG's not on the screen just by where they are in the points. So I'd be on the lookout to watch Trackhouse Racing here tonight and to see what they can do.
That is very interesting about Trackhouse. Be very interesting to follow them tonight. They're not having the season they want. A win could change all of that. With that said, now it's time for everyone's favorite game. I feel like this weekend has been one of those weekends where for pick a winner may not be exactly everyone's favorite game. Nobody got the MotoGP race weekend at all. Alex Marquez won the sprint race. We had Marc Marquez not winning any of the races, so that didn't go well for anybody. And then on top of that, we had also Formula One. A couple people got Lando Norris. IndyCar, 2 people got Alex Palou. So taking a look at the updated leaderboard, this is what it is right now, but we have not put in the scores for Alex Palou yet. This is, of course, the graphic that we had during our Indy 500 pre-race show. So you check out our Indy 500 pre-race and you missed it. See how we talked about the crazes in 1992 are crashing before the Indy 500. That happened later today with Scott McLaughlin. So now let's see if we can continue with this good streak of predictions, but change it from race stuff happening to winners. Tanner, starting with you, who is going to win the Coca-Cola 600?
Well, I'm pretty sure everybody and their mother has heard me talk their ear off about Ryan Blaney and how he's going to win a bunch this year. And thankfully, you're going to get a week off because I'm not picking him this week. I'm actually siding with the driver that's starting in P12, Tyler Reddick. Tyler Reddick has never finished outside the top 10 at the Coca-Cola 600, unbeknownst to a lot of people. He has finished 6th, 5th, and 4th in the last 3 years. So naturally, you'd probably think, well, he's probably going to finish 3rd tonight, and we'll finally get his win here in 2027. But I'm thinking he's going to jump through a couple of hoops tonight and make his car owner proud in the capital of NASCAR auto racing at Charlotte Motor Speedway, capping off a 600-mile grueling journey by bringing that Unleash the Beast car to victory lane.
Hey, absolutely. Love the Patriotic by 2311, right? Not a single red, white, and blue thing on either of their cars. But it's funny, Tanner, I think that's a wonderful pick. Usually we don't have a discussion, but I think Tyler Reddick was one of my top 3. That's a great pick. I think you took half my fantasy lineup, so make sure to get your guys' picks in. I was thinking Reddick, I was thinking Ryan Blaney, but I'm gonna go a different route just because I am clearly choking up there. I had like a 3-4 race lead. Now it's 1. So not doing too hot up there. I'm going to go with the driver that has a new spotter, the driver who's $1 million richer, the driver who was winning when the rain came out last year. The driver, one of the few in all of NASCAR that I would choose at any single track on any given Sunday or Saturday night. I think Christopher Bell can be the next back-to-back. Just like I'm trying to go back-to-back and pick a winner, I think Christopher Bell can go back-to-back in the Coke 600.
Call it Mr. Humidity.
Oh, man. 2 great picks. I'm going to go with a driver that is in a Chevy. We talked about on this show, and we talked about his teammates, especially Kyle Larson, but I think he's going to prove to everyone, yeah, I belong here too. I'm going with the 48, Alex Bowman, taking the Coca-Cola 600 tonight. That's going to be my pick a winner. So
I love it.
I hope he does it, honestly.
I'm really curious to see how it goes. And of course, Coca-Cola 600 on Amazon Prime. Check NASCAR.com for other viewing options, especially international viewers. And of course, subscribe to us right here on the Grid Network. Tomorrow, we're going to recap the full day of racing right here on YouTube. If you're watching on Facebook or Twitch, you could join us on YouTube, subscribe, hit that bell icon, and follow us across social media at Grid Network TV, plus gridnetworktv.com. Check out Matthew Bro Story. I know you'll be up late working on that, so a long night for you. Hopefully we don't have any weather or too many crazy cautions or overtimes. We don't need this to be the 620. We don't need that.
No,
we just don't need that.
No, heavens no. Please don't let that happen again.
Undo the rain dance that I mentioned for Kobe to do to take the rain from Indy to Charlotte. Yeah, can we undo that?
And then, of course, big thank you to our Patreon investors, Colin Shell, Mark, Ron, David, Master, who are investing in us, and everyone that has done YouTube Super Chat or Buy Me a Coffee. Link in the video description to do either option. With that said, race time is coming up. So for Tanner and Matthew, I'm Joe. Thank you for watching today's program. We'll see you next time and enjoy the race.